Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. In a couple of recent videos I've been showing my onions, and today it's time to harvest the smaller onions. I'll be taking those to the kitchen and pickling them whole, but I also thought I'd grab some of the larger onions that are splitting and need to be used, and I'm going to slice them and do a quick pickle. Just having a look at them, I've decided to grab them all now because some of them are getting a little bit large for this whole pickling recipe. These tiny little ones in here are all good, but I'm going to be using these for something else. But moving along, you can see where they're sort of jammed in a little bit more. Those ones will be perfect for pickling whole. Now I planted 2 rows of these onions, and I had the turnips next to this row. Now they were sort of really crowded out and I didn't thin out the turnips early enough. Over the other side I had daikon radish, which grew a lot quicker than the turnips. So I was able to clear those out and give these ones plenty of light and space. So those have grown a bit faster and quicker. And these ones on this side are really tiny because they really haven't got the light they needed. These are just my regular onion seeds that I've planted really thickly, and limiting the light and space to these guys has slowed down the growth, so they're going to be perfect in this recipe I'm about to do. So I'm just going to make a start down this end, being careful not to step on all my peas that are behind me here. These shouldn't be too hard to pull out. I think they're going to be a perfect size for this recipe. That one might be a bit too small. Now, these two are definitely the size that's just getting too big for a small pickle. So I'll try curing those ones. Now just the tiniest ones to grab. A few small ones in that lot. Well, that's all my small onions harvested. On the way to the kitchen, let's stop and have a look at my curing onions and select a few of the split ones that'll be perfect for the quick pickle recipe. My onions have been here curing for about a week and it's been quite cool and damp, so they haven't done a lot of drying out at this stage, so I've still got quite a way to go. Now just having a look at them, there are plenty of the white ones and brown ones which have split, but I think for this pickled recipe I'm going to actually just use some of these red ones, like that one that's split. This one over here looks like it could be used up, and another one here that's kind of split and it's not going to store well at all. And red onions are really great on a salad or in a sandwich once you've pickled them. So that's what I think I'll do. I'll use some of these for pickling. Okay, let's get off to the kitchen. So first up, we're going to make our quick pickle. Now I've already peeled my onions and then sliced them. You can finely slice them or sort of do thick slices, whatever you like. I've kind of done in between. Then you need to make your brine. For the brine, I'm adding 2/3 of a cup of white vinegar, 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of mustard seeds. Then I'll put this on the stove and bring it to the boil. Now, other ingredients I've got here is a clove of garlic. That was fairly large, so I've quartered it. And you can add in whatever herbs you like. In this case, I've just got some oregano. And then it's just a matter of assembling it. So I'll put some onion in my jar, add in some herbs and some of the garlic, and just keep filling the jar up with your ingredients. Make sure it's pretty firmly packed. Then all you need to do is pour on your hot brine. I'll give it a swirl to make sure I get those spices off the bottom and into the jar. Lid on, and then I kind of just shake it around just to move some of those spices through the liquid. And that's our quick pickle done. So the quick pickle is, as the name suggests, really quick. The slow part is waiting to eat it. So it's probably best to wait for 5 to 7 days for the flavours to develop a little bit. But you can start to, give it a try a bit earlier if you're really keen to get going. That one is best kept in the refrigerator. Now we can move on to the next recipe, which isn't quite as quick. It involves cleaning up all these little onions. We've got to top and tail them and then peel them. So I'm going to make a start on that. Okay, we're all done. I've got all my little onions, and while I could probably use this for onion salt, I'm not going to because I've got lots of other greens out in the garden. And these ones were actually a little bit too large for this recipe, so I'm just going to work with these ones here. I'll add some boiled water and leave it to sit for about 10 minutes. When your onions have been sitting in the hot water for long enough, this has been less than 10 minutes, so it's been about 7 minutes so far. You can peel that skin off easily. Now there is still a little bit of dirt here, which I'll be rinsing all of these onions once they're all peeled, just to make sure that I've got all those little bits of dirt off. So all I've got to do now is make my way through this bowl of onions. Now I think I will just drain the rest, and then they should be good to peel. Okay, we're all done. There is a little bit of dirt on these onions, so I'm just going to give them a rinse before we proceed. Once the onions are clean and dry, the next step is to sprinkle the salt, which is 1.5 tablespoons, over the onions, and then cover and put in the refrigerator overnight. Making the brine for this recipe is very similar. I've got 500 ml of white vinegar. I've got about 50 ml of balsamic vinegar. Now the recipe actually calls for malt vinegar, but because I'm celiac, I can't have that. So I'm just kind of making up a different recipe. And I'm going to add in 450 ml of my homemade apple cider vinegar. Now, I'm not sure how this will go with these different vinegars, but hopefully it'll be okay. And then you add in your spices. That's a teaspoon of black peppercorns, teaspoon of mustard seeds, you can use any colour, a teaspoon of dried chilli flakes, actually I don't want to waste any of those, and a teaspoon of my homegrown coriander seeds. Now the recipe calls for 160 gram of sugar, but I'm just halving that. I don't like to use too much sugar, so I'll see how I go. The sugar's not needed for preserving, it's the acid from the vinegar that will preserve the onions, so that doesn't affect that at all. Now we do have to heat that and just give it a bit of a stir just to make sure the sugar dissolves. It doesn't need to come to a boil, just so long as you've dissolved that sugar, and then that's ready to use. Here are my little onions. They've been in the refrigerator overnight with the salt, and I've taken them out, rinsed them off, and I've just kind of gently dried them in this old tea towel. Now I'm just going to pack them into these sterilised jars. I've had the jars in the oven for about 10 minutes. The little ones help fill in the gaps for the big ones, I think. I've managed to fill 6 jars, so now I just need to add my pickling liquid. Now let's top up any. Now there's various spices left in the bottom of my saucepan, so I'm just going to get a spoon and spoon those evenly into all the jars. And just to put the lid on. I'll be keeping the onions in the refrigerator because I changed the recipe to different vinegars. If you use all malt vinegar as the original recipe had, you could water bath can these jars so that they are fine to store in the pantry at room temperature. Well, I didn't intend these little onions to be my pickling onions. That's exactly what they turned out to be. My large white onions were supposed to be the ones for pickling, and these actually I planted just to be a normal size onion. But because of the space I gave them and the light they got and how thickly I planted the seeds, that's what turned out. So we kind of got the pickling onions in the end. And I just love these quick pickles. Now it's going to be 2 months until I can try these. It takes that long for the flavours to develop, but only another 6 days for my quick pickle.